Will Coral Island have voice acting in their game? As of right now, we haven't heard anything about voice acting in the game, but I just wanted to look into how important is voice acting in a game. However, it was interesting to do a little bit of research and see what people think about voice acting and how important it is to them. So today, I'm going to be talking about some good and bad things about voice acting, and I'll give some examples of different games that do it right and some games that could have done a little bit better. And before I start off the good and bad, the one thing I heard a lot was do it right or don't do it at all, because voice acting can sometimes make or break the game. Of course, gameplay is very important, but if the voice acting is really bad, it could just generally ruin the game. But let's start off with some of the good things about voice acting. So voice acting can give more personality and emotion to the characters. When you can hear a character's voice, it makes you almost more attached to that character. Sometimes when games don't have any voice acting, you kind of don't care about the characters as much. Of course, if the dialogue is good and if the story is good, of course you're going to care about the characters. But I think voice acting, if it's done well, really gives a new life to the characters where you are way more invested in them. And how many games that haven't been voice acted have you played where you teared up a little bit? You felt some sort of emotion, some sort of strong emotion, whether it's happy or sad. For example, in The Last of Us, in the beginning of the game, there's a character that dies. And it was a very strong scene. One thing that I noticed is a lot of reactions to that scene. It made a lot of people tear up. And I don't know if I've seen that many games without voice acting that have done the same thing. Voice acting can also make the story more enjoyable. You actually pay attention to the story, you're more immersed into the story. Sometimes people just don't like to read that long dialogue for a character, so they'll just skip through all of it. But if it was voice acted, I could see more people staying and really getting invested into that character or into the game or into the story. There's a game I'm into right now, which is Final Fantasy Online, and this game combines voice acting and non-voice acting. So I would say a majority of the game is not voice acted, so you have to read a lot of stuff to really get immersed into the story. However, they do have big cutscenes where they'll actually voice act them, and those voice acted cutscene moments, I'm really invested into it. I'm really paying attention. I don't have to read anything, and it really makes me get into the game a little bit more. The first expansion of that game, I don't believe is voice acted at all, at least most of it isn't. And I do remember when it was more voice acted, I was more invested in the game and I wanted to play it more. So I know a lot of people actually like to read the dialogue, and because of that, that's one of the bad reasons why some people wouldn't want voice acting into the game. So let's talk about some of the bad things about voice acting. Sometimes, depending on the voice, it could ruin a game, especially if the main character has a voice you don't like, and sometimes the dialogue can be unnatural, especially if the character has no emotion and speaking like a robot. And later I'll talk about some games that have this effect. If the game is voice acted and has a lot of dialogue, some people just prefer to read it and just skip over it. And that's completely fair because some people can just read faster than how the characters speak. So basically the voice acting would have to be really good for it to be in a game and work. And because of that, I've seen a lot of people just say they don't prefer voice acting at all and just prefer reading the dialogue. And I can kind of get on board with that, especially if the dialogue is very important. And if you're an indie company, it's sometimes hard to implement something like that into the game because it is expensive. You have to hire actual voice actors. So next, I want to go over some games that do good voice acting and some that do bad voice acting. So these games I mostly got from Reddit posts and some I came up with myself. One game that people said has really good voice acting is Uncharted.
Hey! Hey! Are you okay?
Yeah.
We heard those explosions, we thought.
Yeah, that's all this guy.
You saved his ass again?
Naturally. How you doing?
Good. Good. There was some close calls, but, he covered me.
Hey. Hey. How's that?
Oh, bullet grazed my shoulder.
Yeah.
You?
Cliffside. Grazed my face.
Apparently it's just very natural and the humor really comes off in a good way and makes the story way more enjoyable than if it didn't have voice acting. There's also Mass Effect. People pointed out that if you played the male main character, then the game would be less enjoyable than if you had the female one.
This war has brought us pain and suffering and loss. But it's also brought us together as soldiers, allies, friends. This bond that ties us together is something the Reapers will never understand. It's more powerful than any weapon, stronger than any ship.
There's also Red Dead Redemption.
Davy's dead.
There was nothing more you could have done.
What are we gonna do? We need supplies.
Well, first of all, you're gonna stay here, and you are gonna get yourself warm. Now, I sent John and Micah scouting out ahead. Arthur and I, we're gonna ride out, see if we can find one of them. And this, just for a short bit.
And last but not least, Hades. And Hades is one game that I did play a little bit, and it has phenomenal voice acting. I know the main character, I think he voice acted a couple of different characters in the game, and they're just so different and unique. It really gives the personality of each character.
Stupid boy. I told you nobody gets out of here, whether alive or dead. Ahoy there, little Hades. You recognize your uncle, do you not?
Good to see you, lad, despite the circumstances.
You come from the bowels of hell. This is not your place.
Few tales are told of Hades, whose very name inspires fear and penitence, reminding us of the inevitable fate which we all share.
I feel like that game, if it didn't have voice acting, a lot of people wouldn't be into it as much, or at least not into the story as much. All right, let's talk about some bad voice acting games. Some people point out Skyrim doesn't have the best voice acting, at least for some of the characters and NPCs. I can totally agree with that and get on board, because if you talk to some of the NPCs, they just sound so similar and have a robotic voice.
The last person that made trouble for Vekel ended up floating in the canal. Catch my drift? You've been a good friend to me. That means something. Vilkas said you're the new Kodlak. I don't know what that means, but you seem honorable, so that's good. They don't like us talking to people when we work. Always good to see a fellow traveler. I hope you found the roads relatively safe, free from dragons at the very least. Need a room? Talk to Delphine.
Now, I'm not saying all the voice acting in the game is bad, but there is definitely some NPCs that do have bad voice acting. There's also Resident Evil 1, which I've never played before or ever heard of the voice acting in the game, but people really tear that one up.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
But Chris is...
What is it? Maybe it's Chris. Now, Jill, can you go?
I'm going with you. Chris is our old partner, you know.
Okay, let me handle this.
And the last game I wanted to save was My Time at Portia. This game in many ways is related to Coral Island because it is a farm sim game. It's also made by a small indie company. And surprisingly, they were able to add voice acting into the game when it came out for full release. However, they did not implement it in the best way. I actually played My Time at Portia before they added voice acting and after they added voice acting. If you play right now, you have a choice between a couple voice actors as you like to be your main character. And depends which one you choose, it can kind of ruin the game. The one I chose kind of ruined the game for me, and I didn't really want to play it anymore, so I decided to just start a new game. However, the voice acting in the game is just not superb, and I'm not sure if there's an option to turn off voice acting as a whole, or if they wanted to keep voice acting.
Now that you're part of our gossip team, you have to tell me where you get your outfits. Standard procedure.
Presley, how do you do?
Ah, good to see you again. Hope you had a pleasant journey from Barnarock, right? That's quite far.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm here to show you to your workshop, so if you would please follow me, it's pretty close.
I wonder what it's like. I didn't get to know my pa too well.
Now let's talk about Coral Island, because we know that they aren't going to have voice acting in the game, at least in the early access. They made big strides with partnering with Humble Games and making over $1 million on the Kickstarter last year, and then of course even more money on the backer kit. I could personally see this game having voice acting, and if they do voice acting, I hope they do it right. They would have to hire actual voice actors, and I think with the help of Humble Games they could possibly do that. Do I think it's a necessity? No. Is it a nice add-on? I think so, because I think it would just give more life to the island. I think each character would just have their own personality. Of course, when you read the dialogue, they're going to tell you their likes and dislikes and all of that stuff, but I think with the voice acting, if it is done well, I think it could be a big thing for the game. and I think more people would actually play it and be more invested into the game. There's been a lot of games that don't have voice acting. Well, I'll just skip over the dialogue because I just don't want to read it. But if it has a cutscene or it does have voice acting, I'll actually listen through it. And maybe I'm in the minority there, and maybe most people do like reading the dialogue. From the Reddit posts that I read, there has been a lot of people that do. But if it doesn't take away from other aspects of the game, I think Coral Island should consider this. I don't think it'll come out in early access or anything like that, but maybe by full release or sometime after full release, maybe if they added voice acting, it could be a big thing. But of course, I would like to know what you guys think. Should Coral Island add voice acting into the game? And also, do you prefer games without voice acting or with voice acting? Also, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.